There are some treasures that exist beyond price, beyond the reach of money or power, treasures so magnificent that they transcend mere value and become something else entirely. They become legend. The Amber Room was such a treasure. Imagine, if you will, an entire chamber where every surface glows with the warm, honey-colored light of amber, walls covered in 6 tons of the fossilized resin carved and polished until they seem to glow from within, gold leaf catching the candlelight, mirrors multiplying the radiance until the room itself seems alive, breathing, pulsing with an otherworldly beauty. They called it the eighth wonder of the world, and then, one day, it vanished, not slowly, not piece by piece, but completely, as if the room itself had been swallowed by the earth, leaving nothing behind but rumors, theories, and an obsession that has consumed treasure hunters, historians, and governments for over 80 years. This is the story of the Amber Room, a story of beauty and greed, of war and loss, of mystery and obsession. It's a story that begins in the palaces of Prussia and ends, well, that's the question, isn't it? Where does this story end? Because the Amber Room is still missing, still out there somewhere, waiting to be found, or perhaps already destroyed, reduced to ash and memory. But before we can search for it, we need to understand what it was. We need to understand why men would risk everything to possess it. We need to understand why, even today, people are still digging, still searching, still believing that they'll be the ones to solve history's greatest treasure, mystery. Let me take you back to the beginning, back to when the Amber Room was just an impossible dream. The year is 1701. The place is Prussia, the powerful Germanic kingdom that would one day become the core of Germany. King Frederick the Rubble has just crowned himself, transforming Prussia from a mere duchy into a kingdom. He wants to celebrate. More than that, he wants to make a statement. He wants something so magnificent, so unprecedented, that the entire world will recognize Prussia's greatness. He turns to his court architect, Andreas Schluter, and gives him an impossible task: create a room unlike any other in the world. Now, you have to understand what an audacious request this was. We're talking about the early 18th century, the Baroque period. European monarchs were competing with each other to build the most extravagant palaces, the most stunning throne rooms, the most breathtaking chapels. Versailles had already set the standard with its hall of mirrors. How could Prussia compete? Schluter proposed something radical. Amber, not gold, not marble, not precious gems. Amber, the fossilized resin of ancient trees formed over millions of years, washed up on the shores of the Baltic Sea. To most people, amber was a curiosity, a pretty stone used for jewelry. But Schluter saw something more. He saw that amber could be carved like wood, polished like glass, backed with gold foil to make it glow. And when properly illuminated, amber created a warm, living light unlike anything else on Earth. It was as if sunshine itself had been captured and frozen in time. But there was a problem, a massive problem. Amber is rare, incredibly rare. To panel an entire room in amber would require thousands upon thousands of pieces. It would require master craftsmen who could carve the brittle material without breaking it. It would require years of work. It would require a fortune. Frederick said yes anyway, and so the work began. For 10 years, craftsmen labored. Amber was collected from the Baltic shores. Master carvers from all over Prussia were recruited. Each piece of amber had to be carefully selected for color and clarity. Each piece had to be precisely carved to fit together like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. Each piece had to be backed with gold or silver foil to enhance its glow. They created panels depicting scenes from mythology. They carved intricate mosaics showing flowers and scrollwork. They inlaid the amber with mirrors and precious stones. The room began to take shape, and even in its incomplete state, visitors were awestruck. But Frederick the Threadrunner would never see it completed. He died in 1713 when the room was still under construction. His son, Frederick William I, inherited the throne. And Frederick William had a problem. He hated the amber room, not because it wasn't beautiful, but because he was a practical, military-minded king who thought the project was an absurd waste of money and resources. He called it frivolous. He ordered the work stopped. The partially completed panels were packed away in storage, gathering dust. The amber room might have remained there, forgotten and incomplete, if not for a fateful meeting in 1716. Tsar Peter the Great of Russia visited Prussia. Peter was a giant of a man in every sense, over 6.5 feet tall, with a personality that filled any room he entered. He was in Prussia to forge an alliance against Sweden. The two kings toured Frederick William's palaces, discussing military strategy and trade agreements, and then Peter saw the amber panels. He stopped dead in his tracks. For a moment, this force of nature, this man who had single-handedly dragged Russia into the modern age, stood silent, mesmerized by the warm glow of the amber. Frederick William, ever the opportunist, saw his chance. He made Peter a gift of the amber room. All of it. The panels, the decorations, the mirrors, everything. It was diplomatic genius. The cost of the room was nothing compared to the value of a Russian alliance. And Frederick William was happy to be rid of what he saw as a frivolous extravagance. Peter was overjoyed. He had the entire room carefully packed and transported to Russia. Hundreds of crates, each containing fragments of what would become the eighth wonder of the world, made the long journey to St. Petersburg. But Peter, like Frederick the Roan before him, would never see the amber room completed. He died in 1725, with the amber panels still in storage. It would fall to his daughter, Empress Elizabeth, to finally realize the room's potential, and she would transform it into something even more magnificent than its creators had imagined. Elizabeth came to power in 1741, and she had inherited her father's love of beauty and grandeur. She also had something her father lacked: time, money, and an obsessive attention to detail. She decided the amber room would be installed in the Catherine Palace, her summer residence in Tsarskoye Selo, about 15 miles south of St. Petersburg. But there was an immediate problem. The room was too small for the space she had chosen. No matter. She ordered her court architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli to expand it. For the next 14 years, from 1743 to 1757, Rastrelli and his craftsmen transformed the amber room from a beautiful curiosity into an absolute masterpiece. They added more amber panels, sourced at enormous expense from the Baltic. They created 4 magnificent Florentine mosaics made of precious stones: agate, jasper, quartz. They added gilded carvings. They installed more mirrors, carefully positioned to multiply the amber's glow infinitely. They added candelabras and sconces that would make the entire room shimmer when lit. And when they were finally finished, they had created something that defied description. Picture it. You enter through tall doors. Your eyes need a moment to adjust because the room seems to generate its own light. Every wall, from floor to ceiling, is covered in amber panels, but not just any amber. Panels carved with incredible detail showing cherubs, flowers, shells, crowns, monograms. Each panel is a work of art in itself. The amber ranges in color from pale yellow to deep orange, from translucent gold to rich brown, and behind each piece, gold foil catches the candlelight and reflects it back through the amber, making the walls appear to be illuminated from within. The mirrors multiply everything. You can't tell where the real room ends and the reflections begin. Turn your head, and the light dances and shifts. The entire space seems alive, breathing, glowing. The 4 Florentine mosaics depict allegories of the senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Each one is composed of thousands of tiny pieces of semi-precious stones, fitted together with such precision that they look like paintings. The total surface area covered in amber, about 590 square feet. The total weight of amber, approximately 6 tons. The number of amber pieces, over 100,000. The amount of gold used, about 1,000 pounds. The value? Incalculable. Contemporary accounts describe the Amber Room as almost supernatural in its beauty. Catherine the Great, who inherited the room from Elizabeth, used it for meditation and intimate receptions. She called it her jewel box. Foreign ambassadors would emerge from audiences in the Amber Room, literally speechless, struggling to describe what they had seen. It became the pride of the Russian Empire. More than a room, it was a symbol of Russian cultural achievement, of the nation's ability to compete with and surpass the great courts of Europe. For nearly 200 years, the Amber Room remained in the Catherine Palace. It survived the Russian Revolution. It survived the chaos of the early Soviet period. It was carefully maintained, studied, photographed. It received visitors from around the world who came just to stand in its presence for a few precious moments. And then came 1941, and everything changed. June 22nd, 1941. 3 million German soldiers crash across the Soviet border in the largest military invasion in human history. Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's betrayal of Stalin, the beginning of the most devastating conflict ever fought. The Germans advance with terrifying speed. Within weeks, they've captured vast territories. Within months, they're approaching Leningrad, modern St. Petersburg. And in their path lies Tsarskoye Selo, the Catherine Palace, the Amber Room. The Soviet curators know what's coming. They've been preparing for weeks, desperately trying to evacuate the palace's treasures. Paintings are removed from frames and rolled up. Sculptures are crated. Furniture is loaded onto trucks. Everything that can be moved is moved. But the Amber Room presents an impossible problem. Amber is fossilized resin. It's brittle. It's delicate. It's been attached to the walls for nearly 200 years. The backing, the adhesive, the wood panels, all of it has fused together over time. And the Soviet curators quickly discover something horrifying. They can't remove it. Every attempt to detach the amber panels causes damage. Pieces crack, fragments break away. The adhesive has become so old and brittle that any effort to separate the amber from the walls threatens to destroy it. They try everything, different tools, different techniques, different chemicals. Nothing works. The Amber Room has become part of the palace itself. To remove it would be to destroy it. So they make a desperate decision. They'll hide it. They cover the amber panels with gauze and wallpaper. They hope, pray, that the Germans won't notice, that they'll see wallpaper and think the room is unimportant. It's a desperate gamble, and everyone knows it won't work. But they have no choice. September 17th, 1941, German forces capture Tsarskoye Selo. Among them are members of the Kunstschutz, the art protection units, but also with them are members of the Einsatzstab, Reichsleiter Rosenberg, Alfred Rosenberg's task force, whose job is not to protect art, but to loot it, to systematically plunder occupied territories of anything valuable and send it back to Germany. They enter the Catherine Palace. They walk through its magnificent halls, and they come to a room covered in cheap wallpaper. It takes them approximately 10 minutes to realize what's hidden beneath. The Nazis are overjoyed. They knew about the Amber Room from historical records, but many believed it had been destroyed or hidden elsewhere. And here it is, right in front of them, poorly disguised but intact. Orders come directly from Berlin. Dismantle the Amber Room. Pack it carefully. Send it to Germany immediately. What the Soviets couldn't do in weeks, the Germans do in 36 hours. They bring in specialist craftsmen. They have the right tools, the right solvents, the right techniques. Working around the clock, they carefully remove each amber panel from the walls. They dismantle the mosaics. They detach the mirrors. They pack everything into 27 crates. Locals watching from hiding would later report seeing the crates being loaded onto trucks, guarded by armed soldiers. The convoy drives west, away from the advancing Soviet lines, deeper into German-controlled territory. The Amber Room is going home, back to Prussia, back to Königsberg, the ancient capital where amber has been treasured for centuries. But this homecoming will be brief, because Königsberg is about to become hell on earth. The Amber Room arrives in Königsberg in late 1941. It's installed in Königsberg Castle, the massive medieval fortress that dominates the city. Dr. Alfred Rode, the director of the castle's museum, personally oversees its reinstallation. For a brief period, the room is displayed again. Nazi officials visit. They take photographs. They write reports about the successful recovery of this Germanic treasure. Never mind that it was Russian property. Never mind that it was stolen. In Nazi ideology, anything beautiful created by Germans naturally belonged to Germany. Dr. Rode and his wife become the Amber Room's custodians. They catalog every piece. They create detailed documentation. They ensure it's properly maintained. In the insanity of the war, they try to preserve this island of beauty. But by 1943, the war is turning. Stalingrad has fallen. The Germans are retreating on the Eastern Front. The Allies are bombing German cities day and night. Königsberg, a major industrial and military center, is a prime target. In August 1944, British bombers devastate Königsberg. Much of the city is reduced to rubble. The castle is hit and sections of it are destroyed. But the Amber Room survives, protected in a deeper section of the building. Dr. Rode receives orders. Pack up the Amber Room, prepare it for evacuation, move it to safety before the Soviets arrive. But does he follow these orders? This is where the story fractures into multiple timelines, multiple possibilities, and decades of confusion. According to some accounts, Rode does pack up the Amber Room in January 1945. The crates are loaded onto a train or truck. They're sent west, perhaps to Berlin, perhaps to Bavaria, perhaps to Austria. The room escapes Königsberg just before the Soviet siege begins. According to other accounts, Rode refuses the order. He believes the Amber Room is safer in the castle than in transit through a war zone. He hides it somewhere in the castle's labyrinth of underground chambers and storage rooms. It stays in Königsberg, concealed, waiting for the war to end. And according to still other accounts, it's too late. The Amber Room is still in the castle when the Soviets arrive, and what happens next depends on which version of the story you believe. What we know for certain is this. In April 1945, the Soviet Red Army lays siege to Königsberg. The battle is brutal. The city is pounded by artillery. The castle is hit repeatedly. Fires break out. Sections of the building collapse. When the Soviets finally capture Königsberg on April 9, 1945, the castle is heavily damaged. Parts of it are still burning. The roof has collapsed in places. Many rooms are filled with rubble. Soviet trophy brigades, teams specifically tasked with recovering looted Soviet property, immediately begin searching the castle. They're looking specifically for the Amber Room. Stalin himself has ordered its recovery. The search is thorough, systematic, and desperate. They find many things. They find stolen artwork. They find looted treasures from dozens of Russian palaces. They find Nazi gold. They find documents. But they don't find the Amber Room. Days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months. They search every room. They excavate collapsed sections. They interrogate prisoners who worked in the castle. They question local civilians who might have seen something. Nothing. Dr. Rode and his wife die under mysterious circumstances in the chaos of Königsberg's capture. Whether they were killed in the fighting, committed suicide, or were murdered for what they knew will never be certain. But with them dies the most direct knowledge of what happened to the Amber Room. The trail goes cold. The Amber Room has vanished, and for the next 80 years the search would become an obsession. The Soviet Union wanted the Amber Room back, not just because it was valuable, though it was priceless, but because it was a symbol of Russian cultural heritage, a symbol of Nazi theft, and most importantly, a symbol that needed to be recovered to show that the Soviet Union was victorious, powerful, and capable of reclaiming what was theirs. Stalin ordered a massive investigation. The KGB devoted enormous resources to the search. They interrogated thousands of former Nazi officials. They examined captured German documents. They followed up on every lead, every rumor, every whisper. And the leads were everywhere. Some claimed the Amber Room had been shipped to Austria, hidden in salt mines along with other Nazi loot. American troops had discovered enormous caches of stolen art in Austrian salt mines at the end of the war. Could the Amber Room be among them? Search teams examined the mines. They found treasures beyond imagination. Paintings by Vermeer and Rembrandt, gold coins, religious artifacts, but no Amber Room. Others claimed it had been sent to Bavaria, to the underground complex beneath Neuschwanstein Castle, or to a bunker outside Berlin, or to a secret facility in the Harz Mountains. All of these locations were searched exhaustively. Teams spent years excavating tunnels, draining flooded chambers, examining every possible hiding spot. Nothing. Some believed the Amber Room had been destroyed, that it had burned in the fires that consumed Königsberg Castle, that when the Soviet soldiers failed to find it, it was because there was nothing left to find, just ash and melted amber, indistinguishable from the rubble. This theory gained support from testimony by Königsberg residents who claimed to have seen the castle burning for days after its capture. Amber is organic material. It burns. If the room had been in the castle when it caught fire, it might have been completely destroyed. But other witnesses contradicted this. They claimed to have seen crates being removed from the castle in January 1945, before the Soviet siege began. They described trucks loaded with wooden boxes guarded by German soldiers heading west out of the city. If these witnesses were correct, then the Amber Room survived Königsberg. It was out there somewhere. And the search expanded. The 1960s and 1970s saw renewed interest as Soviet and German researchers compared notes. The Cold War was thawing slightly, and there was hope that cooperation might yield results. A breakthrough seemed to come in 1979. Georg Stein, a German researcher, claimed to have found documents suggesting the Amber Room had been hidden in a sealed section of tunnels beneath Königsberg. He assembled a team and received permission to excavate. They found a sealed tunnel entrance. Behind it, a chamber that hadn't been opened since 1945. Hearts pounding, they entered. Inside, they found wooden crates, old German military markings, the right time period. This could be it. This could be the discovery of the century. They opened the first crate. Inside, silverware, plates, household items looted from Russian homes. Valuable, yes, but not the Amber Room. They opened every crate in the chamber. None of them contained amber. The disappointment was crushing, but it also raised new questions. If someone had gone to the trouble of sealing this chamber, of hiding these crates, what else might be hidden in Königsberg's labyrinth of underground tunnels? Through the 1980s and 1990s, the search continued. Ground-penetrating radar was used to scan beneath the ruins of Königsberg Castle, now part of the Russian city of Kaliningrad. Anomalies were detected. Excavations were conducted. Several times, searchers found sealed chambers or hidden rooms. Each discovery brought hope. Each hope was disappointed. But then something interesting happened. Pieces started showing up. In 1997, the family of a deceased German officer turned over a Florentine mosaic that had been part of the Amber Room. The officer had taken it during the looting of Catherine Palace. It had been in his possession for over 50 years. This proved at least that pieces of the Amber Room had made it to Germany and might still exist. Other fragments surfaced over the years. A small amber panel here, a carved decoration there. Each piece confirmed that the Amber Room had been disassembled and moved. Each piece suggested that more might still be hidden somewhere. But the room itself, the full, glorious masterpiece, remained missing. Let's examine the major theories about what happened to the Amber Room, because after 80 years of searching, we have more questions than answers. Theory 1. It burned. The simplest explanation is often the correct one. The Amber Room was in Königsberg Castle when the castle was bombarded and burned in April 1945. Amber is organic. It's flammable. If the room was caught in the fires, it would have burned completely, leaving only small fragments and melted residue that would be impossible to distinguish from other debris. Supporting this theory, multiple witnesses reported extensive fires in the castle. The Soviets' failure to find any trace, despite thorough searches, the fact that other organic materials in the castle were destroyed. Against this theory, witnesses who claimed to have seen crates being removed from the castle before the Soviet assault, the recovered pieces that prove at least some of the room survived. The fact that amber, while flammable, requires intense heat to completely destroy. Theory 2. It's still in Königsberg, Kaliningrad. Perhaps Dr. Rode did hide the amber room somewhere in the castle's extensive underground network. The castle had multiple basements, secret passages, and storage chambers. In the chaos of the siege, the Soviets might have missed it. It might still be there, beneath the ruins, waiting to be discovered. Supporting this theory, the castle has never been fully excavated. Ground-penetrating radar has detected numerous anomalies that haven't been investigated. The city has been built over many of the original structures, making comprehensive archaeological work nearly impossible. Against this theory, decades of searching by people with every motivation to find it. The fact that someone would have had to seal the hiding place extremely well for it to remain undiscovered for 80 years. Theory 3. It was evacuated and hidden elsewhere. This is perhaps the most popular theory among treasure hunters. The amber room was packed up in January 1945 and sent west. It could be in the silver mines of Saxony, where other Nazi loot was hidden, a bunker outside Berlin, sealed when the city fell, a castle basement in Bavaria, a salt mine in Austria, a submarine that was sunk while trying to escape to South America, a ship that was bombed while crossing the Baltic. Supporting this theory, witness testimony about crates being loaded onto trucks, German documents referring to special cargo being evacuated from Königsberg, the Nazi pattern of hiding valuables in mines, bunkers, and remote locations. Against this theory, the massive searches of all likely locations, the difficulty of moving something as fragile as the amber room through a war zone, the lack of any concrete documentation. Theory 4. It was deliberately destroyed. Some suggest that Nazi officials, knowing they would lose the war, deliberately destroyed the amber room rather than let it fall back into Soviet hands. This wouldn't be unprecedented. The Nazis destroyed many things they couldn't evacuate. Supporting this theory, the Nazi scorched earth mentality near the war's end, the complete absence of any verifiable trace. Against this theory, the recovered pieces prove at least some of it survived. The Germans generally tried to preserve valuable art, even at the war's end. Theory 5. It was privately hidden and remains in private hands. Perhaps someone, a German officer, a local Königsberg resident, a Soviet soldier, managed to hide portions of the amber room and kept it secret. The pieces might be in someone's basement, in a Swiss bank vault, in a private collection, held by someone who knows their value, but also knows they could never sell them without revealing the theft. Supporting this theory, the recovered pieces that were in private hands for decades, the difficulty of selling such recognizable items on the open market, the fact that people successfully hid other looted artworks for generations. Against this theory, the room consisted of large, heavy panels. It would be nearly impossible to hide all of it privately. Someone would have talked by now, so which theory is correct? The frustrating answer is, we don't know. We may never know. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, because while the original amber room remains lost, it has been recreated. In 1979, the Soviet government made a bold decision. If they couldn't find the original, they would rebuild it. They would use the same techniques, the same materials, the same painstaking craftsmanship that created it the first time. It seemed impossible. The original had taken decades to create. Many of the techniques had been lost over the centuries. Amber was scarce and expensive. And most challenging of all, they would need to work from black and white photographs and written descriptions because detailed color documentation of the original room was limited. But they started anyway. Master craftsmen from across Russia were recruited. Experts in amber carving were found in the Baltic regions. Art historians studied every available photograph, every written description, every historical document. They analyzed the recovered pieces under microscopes to understand the original techniques. And slowly, painfully slowly, the new amber room began to take shape. The work continued through the collapse of the Soviet Union, through economic crisis, through political upheaval. A German gas company eventually provided funding, seeing the project as an act of reconciliation between Germany and Russia. For 24 years, craftsmen worked. Over 40,000 pounds of amber were collected. Gold was applied. Mosaics were recreated. Each panel was carved by hand using tools that hadn't changed in 300 years. And in 2003, on the 300th anniversary of St. Petersburg's founding, the recreated amber room was open to the public. I want you to imagine what it felt like for the craftsmen who completed it. These were people who had devoted years, some of them decades, of their lives to recreating something they had never seen, working from photographs, working from descriptions, working from faith that they were bringing back something beautiful. And when it was finally complete, when they stood in that room and saw the amber glowing, the mirrors reflecting, the gold gleaming, they had done it. They had resurrected the eighth wonder of the world. Today, you can visit the Catherine Palace in Tsarskoye Selo and stand in the amber room. It's not the original, but it's as close as most of us will ever get, and the experience is reportedly transcendent. Visitors still emerge speechless, overwhelmed by the beauty. But even as the recreation stands as a triumph, the mystery remains.